What happens when royalty meets real talk on live television? In just 38 seconds, one careless comment would turn a simple interview into the most explosive meltdown in late-night history. The studio lights were burning hot that Friday night. Bill Maher sat behind his desk with that familiar smirk on his face, the one that told audiences they were in for something good. Across from him sat Prince Harry, dressed in an expensive suit that probably cost more than most people make in a month. The audience was packed, every seat filled with people who had no idea they were about to witness television history. Bill leaned forward, his fingers steepled together like he always did when he was about to dig into something juicy. "So, let's talk about your book," he said, his voice carrying that signature blend of humor and challenge. "You've made quite a bit of money, telling your family's secrets to the world." Harry shifted in his seat. You could see the tension already starting to build in his shoulders. "I wouldn't call them secrets," he replied, his British accent cutting through the air. "I call them truths that needed to be told." "Right, truths," Bill said, drawing out the word like he was tasting something sour. "Truths that just happened to come with a multi-million-dollar book deal. Funny how that works." The audience laughed. It was that nervous kind of laughter, the kind that happens when people can feel something building, but they're not sure what yet. Harry's jaw tightened. You don't understand what it's like growing up in that family. The pressure, the scrutiny, the complete lack of privacy. "Oh, I don't understand," Bill shot back, leaning even further forward. "Let me tell you what I understand. I understand that millions of people work 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. I understand that there are kids going to bed hungry every night. And here you are, a guy who grew up in literal palaces, complaining about how hard you had it." "That's not fair," Harry said, his voice rising slightly. "Money doesn't shield you from emotional pain." "You're absolutely right," Bill agreed, nodding his head slowly. "But it sure does buy you a nice therapist and a mansion in California where you can cry about it in comfort." The audience erupted. Some were laughing, others were gasping. Harry's face was turning red now, the kind of red that starts at the collar and works its way up. "You're being incredibly disrespectful," Harry said, his finger pointing across the desk. Bill raised his eyebrows. "Disrespectful? I'm just asking questions. Isn't that what journalists are supposed to do? Or did you think this was going to be another one of those softball interviews where everyone treats you like you're made of glass?" "There's a difference between asking questions and being deliberately cruel," Harry snapped back. "Cruel?" Bill repeated, and now there was genuine surprise in his voice. "You want to talk about cruel? Let's talk. About how you threw your family under the bus on international television. Let's talk about how you aired out dirty laundry that didn't just affect you, but your brother, your father, people who can't exactly fire back without looking petty." Harry stood up slightly, then sat back down, clearly struggling to control himself. "My family made my life miserable. They drove my wife to the point where she didn't want to live anymore. That's what we're talking about here." "And I'm sorry that happened," Bill said, and for a moment his voice actually softened. "Truly I am. Mental health is serious. But here's what I don't get. You left the royal family to get privacy, right? That was the whole thing. You wanted privacy and a normal life." "Yes," Harry said firmly. "So then why?" Bill continued, spreading his hands wide. "Why did you sign deals with Netflix? Why did you write a tell-all book? Why are you doing interview after interview? That's not seeking privacy, my friend. That's seeking attention while complaining about attention." The audience was dead silent now. This was the moment everyone would talk about later. This was the moment that would be clipped and shared 1,000,000 times across every social media platform. Harry's face had gone from red to almost purple. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he said through gritted teeth. "Then educate me," Bill challenged. "I'm sitting right here. Educate me on how someone who claims to want privacy does everything possible to stay in the spotlight." The deals were about financial independence, Harry explained, his voice strained. We needed to support ourselves. Bill laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. Financial independence? Your grandmother left you millions. Your father was giving you an allowance that most people couldn't earn in 10 lifetimes. You could have gotten a regular job like everyone else. You could have actually lived that normal life you keep saying you wanted. But no, the only way you could think to make money was to sell out your family. I did not sell out my family, Harry said loudly, his voice echoing through the studio. What would you call it then? Bill pressed. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you took everything they ever told you in confidence, everything they ever did behind closed doors, and you packaged it up and sold it to the highest bidder. Harry stood up now. Really stood up, his hands balled into fists at his sides. You don't get to judge me. You sit here in your comfortable studio, making jokes about things you know nothing about, acting like you're better than everyone else. I never said I was better than anyone, Bill replied calmly, staying seated. But I will say this. I've never pretended to be something I'm not. I've never cried about wanting privacy while simultaneously courting every camera I could find. I've never claimed to be a victim while living a life 99% of the world would kill for. This is unbelievable, Harry muttered, shaking his head. Absolutely unbelievable. What's unbelievable, Bill said, his voice getting sharper now, is that you actually thought you could come on this show and not get real questions. Did your people not do their research? Did they not tell you that this isn't the kind of show where we just nod and smile and let you promote whatever you're selling? I thought I would be treated with basic respect, Harry said. You are being treated with respect, Bill countered. Respect means treating you like an adult who can handle tough questions. What you wanted was deference. You wanted me to bow and scrape like everyone else in your life has done. But that's not how this works. Harry pointed at Bill again, his hand shaking slightly. You're a bully. That's what you are. You hide behind comedy and pretend you're just being honest. But really, you're just mean. The audience gasped. You could feel the energy in the room shift. This was crossing a line. Bill stood up now too, facing Harry across the desk. I'm a bully? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I'm a bully because I asked you to explain yourself? Let me tell you something about bullies. Bullies pick on people who can't fight back. Bullies go after the weak and the vulnerable. You're a prince. You've got money, power, influence, a platform that reaches millions. If anyone's bullying anyone here, it's you trying to intimidate me into backing down. This interview is over, Harry announced, ripping off his microphone. Oh, now the interview is over, Bill said, laughing. Now that someone finally called you out on your nonsense, suddenly you don't want to talk anymore. How convenient. Harry threw his microphone onto the chair. The sound of it hitting the seat echoed through the studio like a gunshot. You know what your problem is? He said, his voice shaking with anger. Your problem is that you think being rude is the same thing as being smart. You think tearing people down makes you clever. But all it really makes you is sad. And you know what your problem is? Bill fired back. Your problem is that you've been coddled your entire life. You've had people telling you how special you are, how hard you have it, how everyone should feel sorry for you. And the second someone treats you like a regular person, like someone who should be able to defend their choices, you fall apart. Harry took a step toward the desk. For a second, it looked like he might actually try to do something physical. The audience held its breath. Security started moving from the sides of the studio. You want to know the real reason I wrote my book? Harry asked, his voice low and intense. Because people like you exist. People who think they know everything about everyone. People who sit in judgment without knowing what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes. That's beautiful, Bill said sarcastically. Really touching. Did you workshop that line, or did it just come to you? I'm done, Harry said, turning toward the exit. Yeah, you said that already, Bill called after him. But Harry wasn't stopping. He walked past the cameras, past the audience, heading straight for the door. Bill called out, "Ladies and gentlemen, Prince Harry, everyone, showing us all how to handle criticism with grace and maturity." Harry spun around one last time. "You want maturity? How about you try having some compassion? How about you try understanding that just because someone has money doesn't mean they don't have problems?" "I never said you don't have problems," Bill replied. "I said your problems are different from most people's problems. And when you're making millions complaining about those problems to people who are struggling to pay rent, maybe you should expect some pushback." "Everything is a joke to you, isn't it?" Harry asked. "Everything is material for your show." "Well, my life isn't a punchline. My pain isn't entertainment." "Then why did you put it on Netflix?" Bill asked simply. That was it. That was the final straw. Harry didn't say another word. He just turned and walked straight out of the studio. The door slammed behind him with a bang that made everyone jump. The audience didn't know whether to clap or sit in silence. Some people started applauding, but it was scattered and uncertain. Bill stood there for a moment, looking at the door Harry had just exited through. Then he turned back to the camera and said, "Well, that went well. We'll be right back after this commercial break, if we still have a show." The studio erupted in nervous laughter. Bill sat back down at his desk, straightening his papers like nothing unusual had just happened. During the commercial break, producers were running around frantically. The audience was buzzing with conversation. Everyone was asking the same questions. Did that really just happen? Was it real? Was it planned? When the show came back from commercial, Bill addressed what everyone had just witnessed. So, in case you're just joining us, Prince Harry walked off the show. And before anyone asks, no, that wasn't planned. That was very, very real. He paused, letting that sink in. "Look," Bill continued, "I'm not here to pile on. The guy's gone. He made his choice. But I think what we just saw is a perfect example of what happens when someone who's used to being surrounded by yes people encounters actual questions. And here's the thing that bothers me. It's not that he got upset. People get upset. I get it. It's that he seemed genuinely shocked that anyone would challenge him." Bill leaned back in his chair, getting comfortable. "We live in this weird time where having money and fame somehow means you're above criticism. Where if you share your story, everyone's supposed to just accept it without question. But that's not how the world works. That's not how conversation works. If you're going to put yourself out there, if you're going to write books and do interviews and make documentaries, you have to be prepared for people to disagree with you." The audience was hanging on every word now. "And I'll say this," Bill added, "I don't hate the guy. I don't even dislike him. I just think he's confused. He wants all the benefits of being royal without any of the responsibilities. He wants all the attention without any of the scrutiny. He wants to be famous for being authentic, but only if that authenticity is met with universal praise. And life doesn't work that way." Someone in the audience shouted, "Tell it, Bill." Bill smiled. "I will tell it, because here's what really gets me. There are real victims in the world. There are people suffering real injustice. There are people being persecuted, imprisoned, killed for speaking their truth. And then there's a guy who grew up in castles, who's married to a beautiful woman, who has healthy kids, who has more money than he could spend in 5 lifetimes, and he's presenting himself as some kind of martyr. It's insulting." The applause was stronger now, more confident. "Now, some people are going to watch this and say I was too hard on him," Bill continued. "They're going to say I should have been more gentle, more understanding. And to those people I say, why? Why does he deserve special treatment? Because he's a prince? Because he's famous? Because he's been through hard times? Everyone's been through hard times. The difference is, most people don't get million-dollar book deals to talk about it." Bill picked up his notes, glancing at them briefly. We were supposed to spend this whole segment talking about his charity work. We were supposed to discuss his foundation, his initiatives, all the good things he's doing. And we would have if he'd stuck around. But instead, the moment the conversation got even slightly uncomfortable, he bailed. And that tells you everything you need to know. An audience member yelled out, "He couldn't handle you, Bill." "It's not about handling me," Bill said, shaking his head. "It's about handling reality. It's about being able to defend your choices when someone questions them. If you believe in what you're doing, if you're confident in your path, then a few tough questions shouldn't send you running for the door." Bill set his notes down and looked directly into the camera. "Here's my message to Prince Harry, if he's watching. And I'm guessing he's not, because I'm pretty sure I'm blocked on every platform he's on by now. But just in case. Come back anytime. Seriously. Come back, and we'll have a real conversation. Not a fight, not a debate, a conversation. Because I think there's probably a lot we could actually agree on if we got past the defensiveness." He paused for effect. "But you've got to be willing to answer hard questions. You've got to be willing to hear perspectives that aren't just praise and validation. Because that's what adults do. That's what real discourse looks like. And if you can't handle that, then maybe stop doing interviews. Maybe stop writing books. Maybe just live that quiet life you keep saying you want." The audience applauded again, longer this time. Bill smiled and said, "All right. We need to move on because we actually have other guests who, hopefully, won't storm off the set. Coming up next, we've got someone who knows a thing or two about handling pressure and criticism. Please welcome our next guest." Backstage, people were still talking about what had happened. Crew members were replaying the footage, watching Harry's face turn red, watching him stand up, watching him walk out. It was already being uploaded to social media. Within minutes, it would be everywhere. Production assistants were fielding calls from news outlets wanting comment. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. What really happened? What was said during the commercial break? Was Harry really that angry? And the answers were yes, it was real. Yes, he was really that angry. And no, nothing was said during the commercial break because Harry had already left the building. Back in the studio, Bill was wrapping up the show. "Before we go, I just want to say one more thing about what happened earlier. I don't take pleasure in making people uncomfortable. That's not why I do this. But I do believe in honest conversation. I believe in asking the questions that other people are afraid to ask. And sometimes that means things get heated." He looked into the camera with that trademark intensity. "If Prince Harry never comes back on this show, I'll survive. The show will survive. But I hope he thinks about why he got so angry. I hope he asks himself if maybe, just maybe, some of the criticism he's receiving is valid. Because growth doesn't come from surrounding yourself with people who agree with you. It comes from listening to people who challenge you." Bill shuffled his papers one final time. "That's our show. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with us through that absolutely insane interview. And we'll see you next week. Hopefully with guests who can take the heat." The credits rolled. The audience filed out, already pulling out their phones to tell people what they'd just witnessed. Bill sat at his desk for a moment, alone, thinking about how the night had gone. A producer approached him. "That was intense," she said. Bill nodded. "Yeah, but it was real." "Do you think he'll ever come back?" she asked. Bill shrugged. "Probably not. But that's okay. The truth matters more than being liked." The lights in the studio started to dim. Another show was in the books, but this one would be remembered differently than all the others. This was the night a prince walked off live television. This was the night someone finally refused to play along with the narrative. This was the night real questions met royal privilege, and privilege blinked first. Bill gathered his things and headed for his dressing room. Behind him, the crew was already breaking down the set, But they were doing it quietly, still processing what had happened. You could feel it in the air. Something significant had occurred. Something people would be talking about for a long time. And as Bill closed the door to his dressing room, he couldn't help but smile. Not because he'd made someone angry, not because he'd won some kind of argument, but because for once, just once, someone had been forced to answer for their actions without the protection of their title, their status, or their carefully managed public image. The conversation had been real. The emotions had been real. And in a world of scripted responses and media training, that was worth something. That was worth everything.